We're here with Mrs. Crowther's 5th grade class, and they're going to be meeting with the fun world of fungi and insects. So with that, I will pass it over to Mika, our presenter.
First off, I'll say I'm a graduate student. I am not that old, but I'm older than you guys, so I understand. I won't make silly jokes, but I will try to make you smile at least once. That is my goal today. So I've got some creepy crawly friends with me. I'd love to show them off. Are you guys interested in that? Can I get like a thumbs up maybe? I'll start off by saying I'm a student in entomology, so that is my job. I'm a professional entomologist. I get paid to study insects all day. I sit in a lab and I get to play around with bugs. Bug friends like these guys right here. This is my friend Miss Dubia Roach. She's a little shy, so you have to be really quiet around her, but I'm sure you guys have no problem doing that. So this is a cockroach. This isn't like the gross cockroaches that you guys are probably associating with the ones that you see in your houses. This is a tropical cockroach, so she lives in Argentina, but we brought her all the way down from Latin America back here. So that's who I have with me today, and she's like already crawling over my arms. So we know that insects, they have this hard exoskeleton. So she has this really hard armor on her. So if I was there in person, I'd go around the room and let you guys touch her. But we can imagine that she has this really hard exoskeleton. And what I mean by when I say exoskeleton is she has bones outside of her body, which is really weird because we have bones inside our body, right? But you have to think of it that she has this hard armor all over her just in case if she were to fall, she'd be fine and dandy. Something else that insects have, they have antennae. You see these little things that she's wiggling around. She's using that to hear and smell and almost see a bit because her eyesight isn't that good. She also, if I can get this really close to the screen, all insects have 3 pairs of legs. If you can count with me, you can see 1, 2, 3. She's moving too much. But they have 3 pairs of legs. Humans have 2. If you look down, or not, you probably have 2 legs. It's okay if you don't, though. But insects have 3, and sometimes they don't have 3 completely either, but that's normally the thing that you can go by. They also have wings. She has little wing pads right here, if you can see. So that's pretty much what makes an insect. So entomologists study insects. When I say entomology, that's just like a fancy word because the first part is entomo, which some guy a long time ago decided in Latin that means insects. She's actually probably cleaner than us because she has tiny little insects that live on her body and they clean things off of her like dirt and her poop. So unlike humans that get to take showers, she has little mites and little insects that eat all the dirt off of her body. So fungus you're probably familiar with. You're probably familiar with the ones that you eat, like mushrooms. You guys probably eat mushrooms. Do we like mushrooms? Do we not? Yeah, they're okay. So mushrooms, they're not a plant or an animal. They're separate. They're their completely own entity. So mushrooms, unlike plants get their food from sunlight, right? And then they can make sugar out of taking in sunlight. Animals eat plants, so then they get their food from them. Mushrooms and fungus don't do that. Mushrooms decompose dead things. So think of mushrooms laying around in the forest. They're decaying and they're breaking down the matter that they come in contact with, and then they eat that. So I'll show off these parasitic fungus. They're called cordyceps. This is what they look like. I have a handful of them. They're nice and orange, right? They're pretty cool. And did you know, it's kind of creepy, but you can eat them. But what they do, we can eat them, but they actually eat insects. So I'm going to talk to you all about entomopathogenic fungus. So that's a really big word, but I'm going to break it down for you, right? So entomo, if you remember, we talked about entomology. We were talking about those Latin words and what the prefixes mean, that the first start of the word means. Entomo means insect right here. So entomopathogenic, if you guys know pathogens, have you heard of something like that? They more so mean diseases. So if you put the big word together, you have entomopathogenic, it means insect disease. So if you have an entomopathogenic fungus, that means fungus that can cause diseases in insects. He's crawling around the soil, and then he comes in contact with a fungus that lives in the soil. All he has to do is brush up against it, and then this fungus can hitch a ride on the insect. So he's on him now. He's not going anywhere. So he's stuck on him, and he actually gets inside the exoskeleton of this insect. So once he penetrates the exoskeleton, so those outside bones, if you remember, it can start growing inside. And when it starts taking over the entire body and there's no more room to grow inside of the insect, then it starts to grow outside of it. So that's what you get when you see those pictures where it looks hairy and fuzzy. That's all those fungal spores that start growing inside. So we have this, we have more, and it starts looking like an old man's beard or something, right? Or almost snow or a jacket. So then you have fungus that's on it. So then all it has to do is it just has to brush up against another insect, and then those spores, they get on top of it too. Now you have two insects that are infected with fungus.
Does the fungus ever stop growing?
Ooh, that's a good question. It will eventually stop growing. So like everything in life, it has to stop at some point. But like that video you saw, it can get really big and spindly. You can have some really cool pictures. I tried to show you guys the picture before. It just takes over their body completely. It doesn't even look like an insect anymore, right? It will stop growing, but it'll continue to grow even after the insect is already dead, which is pretty creepy. I see. Where does the fungus live? Ooh, that's a good question. So mushrooms and fungus, they like really dark places. They're creepy and crawly. They also like wet and damp areas that are almost humid. So not too hot, but not too cold. So you can find them, like I said, on already things that are dying. So like an old tree stump. If you have one in your backyard, you might even be able to find fungus. If you go on a walk with your parents and you see something orange that's sprouting up out of the soil, it might be fungus that's eating an insect right before you. So you just got to go on more nature walks.
Does fungus get on spiders?
Yes, I will show you the picture I have right now. Okay, so if you bear with me, this picture in the top right, that's actually a spider infected. So spiders aren't insects because spiders have 4 pairs of legs, right? And we already said that insects have 3, but fungus does not discriminate. It can still eat all of them. There's a lot of different
Got
types.
something to show y'all. It's kind of like it's like a stick with like fungus all over it.
Oh my goodness, that's beautiful. Where did you find that?
It was at the end of our driveway.
Oh, that's really cool. Do you think it was like in a wet area where like after rain a bunch of fungus popped up?
It just rained here a few days ago, so yeah,
Mhm.
that probably did happen.
Look at you scientist. You put it together. So after rain, a lot of fungus comes up because they really like that wet environment and it helps them grow.
Is it possible that fungi can go onto people, like take over people?
No, okay, so I talked about like how mushrooms can control insects like puppets and zombies. That's a really good question. A lot of people get scared of that. Although that's scary, it won't happen. So the mushroom that is harmful to insects, they aren't harmful to us. But there are certain mushrooms that are harmful to us. I don't want to confuse you too much. But this one that I showed you here that can hurt insects, that doesn't hurt us. That's why you can eat it.
Where do fungus come from?
Ooh, where do fungus come from? They come from the earth and the soil. So there's a big cycle if you think about the water cycle that I'm sure you all are familiar with because you're so smart. So like a water cycle, it goes up, up, and down, down into the earth, out of the earth, into the earth. You can kind of think about that with mushrooms. So mushrooms, they start out in the soil, and then there's something called spores. They're like the little babies of mushroom. So little tiny bits of mushroom, and then they can attach to different things like hosts, so they can find insects that they can grow off of. They can find logs and trees like Caden showed us that they can grow off of. Or sometimes they just grow like plants where you see the toadstool kind of mushrooms that just grow outside of the soil. And then they find things to eat off of like dead trees and insects, and then they go back into the soil. So it's a big cycle.
Do you have any more insects?
I don't, but I have the baby version of this roach. Unfortunately, with everything being COVID, I wanted to have like a bunch of insects to show you guys. I can show you guys the baby of the roach. Would you like to see that? I like to move in my hands too much. So this is the tiny guy. See him? Look how big they are compared to one another. Ta-da!
Does fungus need sun?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yes, it does need sun. Although they like dark places to grow, they need sun a little bit, but not as much as us or plants.
So what happens if they're dark and they need sun? How do they move? In this
Oh, they don't move. I should have said that. So mushrooms and fungus, they stay right where they're put, unless they attach themselves on an insect through their spores and then they grow more. But where a fungus is, a fungus will stay. So a fungus in the soil, it will grow and it'll find that sunlight and it'll stop growing a little bit. Hopefully it's in like a damp place and it'll stay put where it is. So they're kind of like furniture. They stay in the same place a little bit.
Thank you again, Miss Crowther's class, and
Thank
thank you, Jessica, for telling us about fungi and insects.
She says bye.